Alright everyone, welcome back. We're going to be continuing now with classic Nintendo games. Starting with the D's, let's begin with Deja Vu. This eerie title was one of a handful of text-based adventure games for the Nintendo. So they created a very claustrophobic world where you really felt like you were in the moment. And it was scary because it was very unforgiving. Both this one and one that we're going to get to a little bit later became some of my favorites by the sheer virtue of being so outside of the box. Of course, we all know about the popular novels where you could choose your own adventure. Well, in this case, you would be presented with a picture that you could interact with. So you had a real cornucopia of stuff you could do, like you could walk or pick up or move, and just different things that you could do to your environment. And you would pick up clues along the way and have a really exciting time trying not to be slain by all the dangers in the world. And Deja Vu was one that was like, it was kind of a mystery game where it would make a great film, and the film Dark City was a success in its opening minutes because it sort of recreated the same feel, and I think that it wasn't really a good movie overall, but the beginning was awesome because you in Deja Vu, you wake up in a bathroom stall. I think you're covered with blood, you're dirty. I mean, this is a Nintendo game too. You check the pockets of your jacket and you find some clues, like probably a matchbook or a business card with a number on it. And you start going out into the world and evaluating things and trying to figure out the mystery. So, definitely worth a look if you're into classic gaming. These programmers were really onto something. Alright. Double Dragon deserves a mention because of the classic beat-em-ups. It was probably the most successful. It had a lot of elements that were copied by countless games. And usually the strict beat-em-ups I wasn't really too much of a fan of. As you get into things like Super Nintendo arcade ports of Simpsons and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, well, those were fun because they were vibrant and exciting and they really had a lot of bombast. But for the time, Double Dragon spawned a lot of imitators just on the virtue of being so well done. The fun factor for me is pretty low with these classic style beat 'em ups. I did like, well, we missed it somehow, but I did like, I think it was called Bad Dudes. So hope the list I'm referencing isn't missing other titles, but Bad Dudes was pretty good, and I think it's just because I owned it and it had an exciting environment where you were like in a jungle doing a lot of Rambo-esque type of stuff. So Double Dragon. Oh, and that crossover was brilliant. Double Dragon Battletoads. There's really no better mashup just by the sheer strangeness of it all. Alright, Double Dribble was an exciting title, and this was long before NBA Jam and some of the other exciting arcade-style basketball games. And as I mentioned, I'm not too much into the gameplay of sports titles, but when it's done well, like I did have a lot of social fun playing NBA Jam, and I'm sure Double Dribble filled that role nicely when it was the only game in town. So I did like for the PlayStation 1 the cool borders, and so and it's just once again going back to kind of the endless runner style of just being in the zone and trying to get down the hill. So I enjoyed that, and some other games kind of that ilk. Oh, Dr. Mario, isn't that an exciting one? After everybody got tired of Tetris, from wearing your thumbs out playing Tetris every single day for months, Dr. Mario comes along, and it was an exciting title. And they really cared for the source material, and they took a really good deal of care, just making the music exciting and just doing kind of a nice solid upgrade to the Tetris style of gameplay. And some other ones came along later that were not as successful, I think, as Dr. Mario, because there was like Yoshi's, some of these puzzlers I didn't really get into that much, Yoshi's Cookie, and there was Hatris, but just for sheer fun, I think, and for just having a simple gameplay that was very rewarding, Tetris and Dr. Mario were probably the ones. Alright, well, with the Nintendo Power, I was shocked. I could not believe the power of marketing. Like, what they did was send me a copy of Dragon Warrior one time. And it was probably just for renewing your subscription or something. And I know, now I understand these channels and how that could be possible. But I thought, is it really going to come in the mail? Are they actually going to give me a cartridge? Dragon Warrior? And it came in the mail. And I was astounded. And this was probably... well, of course, with Final Fantasy. This was my, and I didn't even own Final Fantasy, but I did own Dragon Warriors. So this is my introduction to top-down, vast, sprawling, epic RPG gameplay, and it was awesome. Nowadays, there's no way I could sit and play anything like that, anything even remotely like that. But for the time, it was so fun, and I would do those battles. I think for the action element, Link 2 did it a little bit better, but for the strict sort of, you have encountered the creatures type of gameplay, they did it really well. Dragon Warrior spawned, it looks like 4 different Dragon Warrior game titles on the regular Nintendo, and it may have fizzled out after that, but it was vibrant and it was exciting, and there was the sensation that if you get onto a strange continent, you're endangering your well-being. So you had to really, well, that's the fun of it, isn't it? Going out into a world and feeling a real palpable danger. And so they made that happen, and they really evoked that sensation with the 8-bit systems, especially with titles like Dragon Warrior, because you get the screen popping up and you're encountering a creature, but if you're in a strange zone and you're far away from the castle, you don't know what's going to appear. Is it going to be a skeleton or something much scarier and worse? Okay, I did mention in passing DuckTales, and so the video game music fans and the people who are covering video game music will often refer to DuckTales for one of the stage songs, one of the Moon stages, I think. But DuckTales was incredible. I did have, I think I did have access to one or both of them. And as a likable character, Uncle Scrooge was very, very fun. And they just recently, over the last 6 months or so, released a new, upgraded DuckTales game, and I was very, very happy to hear the news. Okay, Duck Hunt. Well, could we have even imagined what was in store for us when we opened our Nintendo Entertainment Systems, pulled that zap around, and started firing off shots at those ducks? What an incredible amount of fun. And all of the joy that happened in so many families when the Nintendo hit the shelves, I feel very, very emotional thinking about those Christmas mornings, or when the family got together around the TV and did something where they felt like they were involved with one another and creating a situation of happy, sort of a fun family game night and playing these games together. And the novelty of it all was so exciting. So you've got that zapper, you're armed with it, and I can even hear that chink 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 of the spring trigger release in my mind right now. And for the fun factor and the novelty of it all, Nintendo, it was a slam dunk, easily. One of the more awesome accessories for the Nintendo. And we all know about the Power Glove and the mat and the other types of stuff like Rob, but the Zapper, I didn't ever have Gunsmoke, or whichever the one was where you were shooting at cowboys, but I wish that there would have been a whole range of games and they would have really pushed that a little bit more, because we could have maybe had the first on-rails sci-fi shooters, something, maybe an early franchise that would adopt sort of like a Rockstar element, like an early Aerosmith on-rails sci-fi shooter for the Nintendo. Who knows what could have happened? Alright, I seem to remember enjoying Dino Wars a lot. I think that was one that was kind of like Blaster Master maybe, where you would have like two different types of gameplay elements, or at least you could like jump out of your giant mechanical dinosaur and interact with the environment. And Blaster Master 2 was a really, really awesome one. And my friends were more into it than me. I just don't think that I owned it, but it has gone down through time as being one of the favored Nintendo titles, and it was a fun cartridge. Alright, Excitebike was awesome. Who would have known that it could be even, possible to lend the player a little bit of the design element responsibilities. And some of the greatest fun I've had and the more infectious types of gameplay styles that I've enjoyed over the years has been developing these worlds. And really, when things like Warcraft came along, and The Sims and the Civilization titles, where you are sort of developing your world, placing your dudes and creating your armies in that way, it was really spawned, I guess, by these early pioneers like the Excitebike programmers, because well, they knew that creating something and being a part of that, interacting with that creation, is so infectious. Faxanadu and I think his Wonders from Ease or YS, those were early side-scrolling sort of RPG games, action RPGs. None of them really got the wide acclaim of Zelda or were really quite as successful, but for going for it, they were awesome. Oh, okay. All right, another one, Fester's Quest. Slammed by critics sometimes for being too hard. It is a jumbled, kind of a difficult, kind of a quirky game. Fitting, maybe. It had, you would go into the houses and you would have like this, you'd try to move through the halls of the house in kind of the way that those early RPGs would just have you going like east, north, south, forward. But it also was a top-down kind of a shooter where you would develop your gun. And a lot of people didn't like it. I owned it, so I did play it a lot. And in playing it a lot, I developed a kind of a love for it. You just kind of had to play by its rules, and I never beat it, of course. I mean, I got the dynamite, and then I did a couple of other things, and then but the creatures that they put into the game, like as the enemy bosses, were legitimately terrifying. You were just on a black background. There was no escape. You felt like the real terror of being in a very, cold and dark room with an alien, sort of an entity, lashing out at you. And this was before the first-person shooters, so there wasn't really anything to compare it to. So it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And I think that maybe with this one and some of the other ones that I actually owned, that the critics, or that the really popular YouTube critics hated, well, I kind of like them just because of the well, I was steeped in them. I mean, I owned them, and I would play them often, and then their charm slowly unfolded. But unfold they did, and I liked Fester's Quest. Ooh, now those G.I. Joe games, I played them much later, but I wish I would have owned them because they were pretty fun. You did really feel like you had your arsenal and you were running around in the jungles trying to fight crime or stop whoever the baddies were in that universe. Okay, alright, well, let's see, Gargoyle's Quest 2 is mentioned here, and I remember having Gargoyle's Quest, but maybe it was on the Game Boy. And what an awesome protagonist to have a gargoyle as your guy. And the second one I think was kind of it added in some RPG elements, and it was kind of a real left turn for the series, but the first one was an awesome sort of a side-scrolling platformer where you were a gargoyle, which was pretty much awesome back then. And Gauntlet was super, super fun. I was a big fan of Gauntlet, and I unfortunately that's another one I did not own, but I had access to it at one point or another and played it a lot. And something about it was super fun, like Smash TV came much later, but it wasn't as, because I like fantasy style titles more than anything else. and sci-fi, I guess, is a close second. So just having, taking on the role of a wizard or something, and battling these baddies, and the really gentle kind of strategy elements and exploration elements, it really set the stage for things like Diablo. And I was hooked on Diablo 2, played it forever, lost thousands of hours to that title. And Diablo 1 probably would not have been possible without the at least the spiritual successor that was Gauntlet. Alright, Ghosts and Goblins. Okay, how much fun can you possibly have dying and dying and dying over and over again? I loved it, but for the success of like a horror type of a style of game, Castlevania was way more successful, but if only they would have been a little more forgiving and made it possible for someone who it could have been very challenging and still been very awesome. If it would have had the challenge level of something like Contra, where you do have to kind of work at it to be able to win, and if only Ghosts and Goblins would have allowed for people to beat it, or to even really get pretty far in it, it would have been a sterling title. So it's a little bit unfortunate. I'm saddened a bit by the fact that it was too difficult. Alright, golf. Well, I grew up playing golf with my dad. He would take me to golf clinics where I would talk to the pros, and I would just sort of do training sessions where they would teach you how to golf, and he would take me in the backyard and film me with the VHS recorder, and then we would come inside and watch the way that I was hitting the ball in the backyard and learn that way. And we played miniature golf all the time, so golf to me I've always been very fond of. And the later ones, like the Tiger Woods types of games, and even the more adventuresome sorts of titles, I've always tried to give them a chance and play them. And in some cases I've spent a lot of time playing golf video games. But the original golf, while nothing at all like what we would consider a modern video game golf game, I thought it was pretty awesome. And I still am really, really fond of it. And I would do 18 holes of golf right now. Goonies 2, I owned it. I loved it. Great gameplay. It had those adventuring portions of it too, where you go into the rooms and sort of shuffle around through the safes and jostle things around trying to find clues and items. And it had just the right amount of challenge, and it had a really broad type of a range of levels, and it was extremely well done, and it was a noble combination, or a noble attempt at making something as awesome as the movie. So, okay, Go-Go 13 was a scandalous title. We were all I could never really figure out what was going on, but I remember there's one scene where you meet a woman, and then there's this insinuation about like an affair or some kind of a romantic thing going on, and that was just completely scandalous. All the gore and blood of waking up in a dirty bathroom covered in your own blood was one thing, but we were all used to that. But when you added in the intrigue of like romance, because he was like a spy, he's got a 007 type, so of course they had to put some really subtle, vague sorts of like romance in there with the female lead character. So we were amazed and shocked, and it was just a shocking title for us. It didn't really create the sensation that I was a secret agent, though. Okay, Gradius and Life Force. Beautiful games. Beautiful, beautiful games. I loved the side-scrolling sci-fi shooters. Really, it can't be beat for casual play. Awesome titles. Gradius III on the Super Nintendo, I remember sitting down, popping it into the old Super Nintendo, and watching that first screen where it's like you see the lights coming on because it's the landing strip for a science fiction vessel, and then it like starts landing or it's taking off or something, and it was just like watching the most amazing piece of cinematography. It was vast and incredible, and with the processing power of the Super Nintendo, it was unbelievably awesome. And they got so creative with the types of stages that they were building. I liked Life Force more than Gradius, but I just didn't get on board with Gradius because I guess I didn't know about it until after I played Life Force. But just think about it: you're in like a sci-fi vessel taking on these like biomechanical monsters and creatures and aliens flying at you in every direction, and you've got to rely on your quick wits and your skills. Gradius was fun. Okay, so for the H's, not really too much to mention. But in the I's, Ikari Warriors was fun. I enjoyed it. All this sort of stuff that would make me feel like Rambo, I was all in. It was amazing. So you would have grenades, and it was challenging. Bullets were whizzing around in every direction. It was a very scary situation. You would jump into a tank and start like shooting your tank bullets at the enemies, and that was a really successful, fun game. And although really challenging, I probably never really got very far at it. But I remember distinctly having a good time playing Ikari Warriors. Wizards and Warriors? I never owned it. A challenging and unique fantasy platformer with great music. I have a friend who loves the music of it. I think I only rented it once though. It was a challenge because I was never really too clear about what was going on. Oh yeah. Oh yes. One of my top games. Okay, my neighbor across the street also had a Nintendo. And I went over there one day and he had Jaws. Oh man. Okay, this one gets a bad rap too, but for me, the zen-like experience of floating around and it was just a real free-floating sort of a sensation. They captured it really well. It was a game that to me embodied sort of one of the things video games is all about, and that is sort of an escapist. You're just lurching around in the surf, and then you've got, once you became familiar with the dynamics of the game, it was not challenging. You knew exactly what you had to do. So part of the comfort of that was pretty awesome to me. So Jaws, you've got to try it to know if you'll like it or not. But what you do is you swim around and you shoot stuff in the ocean. And for me, I played it over and over again. I played it into my adulthood, and I still get the same thrill from Jaws as I did back then. And it may be hard for me to exactly explain why, but an incredible title. That finishes out the J's, so let's end it here. We're at 25 minutes. We're going to continue next with the K's, and we're probably going to round out all of my favorite Nintendo titles.